Setting and maintaining healthy boundaries is not just about drawing lines for others, it's about respecting yourself first. When we interact with people, particularly men, it's easy to fall into a pattern of over-accommodating behaviors because we want to be liked, accepted, or even avoid conflict. But here's the truth: over-friendliness can dilute the authenticity of our relationships and confuse the dynamic. It's not about being unkind or dismissive, it's about understanding where your values and comfort lie and communicating them effectively. Boundaries are not walls, they are guidelines that define how we allow others to treat us. Without them, relationships often become imbalanced. When we're overly friendly, we can inadvertently send the wrong message, making it harder for others to know what we truly want or expect. The issue is not just about misinterpretation by others, it's about how we show up in those interactions. Are we being true to ourselves, or are we prioritizing others' feelings over our own needs? Here's the thing: when we avoid setting boundaries, we risk creating situations where our kindness is mistaken for consent, our availability for obligation, or our warmth for romantic interest. These misunderstandings can lead to discomfort, resentment, or even hurt feelings, not just for us, but for the other person as well. Clear boundaries are not about rejection, they're about respect. When we clearly communicate what we're comfortable with, we give others the opportunity to respond appropriately, fostering relationships built on mutual understanding. The fear of setting boundaries often stems from a desire to avoid confrontation or being perceived as rude. But let's reframe that perspective. When you express your limits with clarity and kindness, you're actually creating a space where genuine connection can flourish. It shows that you value yourself enough to articulate your needs, and that's something others will respect, even if it's not always immediate. People who truly value you will appreciate your honesty because it gives them the chance to engage with you authentically. This isn't about creating distance or detachment, it's about cultivating intentionality in how you connect with others. Think of it like a garden. If you let everyone trample through, the flowers will struggle to bloom. But when you create pathways, you guide others to engage with the beauty in a way that preserves its integrity. Your boundaries are those pathways, guiding others to treat you with care and respect while protecting your emotional well-being. The key to setting these boundaries is communication, but it starts with self-awareness. You must first identify what makes you feel comfortable or uncomfortable, and then be brave enough to express it. Yes, it might feel awkward at first, but over time, this practice becomes empowering. By creating boundaries, you're not just teaching others how to treat you, you're also showing yourself that you're worthy of that treatment. And that changes everything. The instinct to please others often comes from a good place, a desire to create harmony, build relationships, or simply be liked. But when this desire turns into a habit of always accommodating others, even at the expense of your own needs, it can have serious consequences. People-pleasing is not kindness, it's a form of self-neglect disguised as generosity. And while it may feel like you're doing the right thing in the moment, constantly bending over backward can lead to resentment, exhaustion, and a loss of self-identity. When we prioritize others' feelings over our own, we send an unspoken message that their comfort matters more than ours. This can unintentionally create an imbalance in relationships where others begin to expect or even take for granted that you'll always say yes, always be available, or always agree. Over time, this erodes respect, not because others are malicious, but because we've trained them to believe that we'll always put their needs first. The truth is, you're not doing anyone any favors by people-pleasing. It may seem harmless, even noble, to say yes when you mean no, or to go out of your way to avoid conflict. But in doing so, you deny others the chance to truly know you. Authentic relationships require honesty, not just about what you like or agree with, but also about what you don't. Being overly agreeable masks your true self, leaving others to interact with a version of you that isn't fully real. How can meaningful connections thrive in that kind of environment? What's more, people-pleasing often comes with a hidden cost. Every time you suppress your own needs to satisfy someone else, you chip away at your own sense of self-worth. Over time, this can leave you feeling drained and disconnected. Worse, it can create a cycle of frustration and guilt, where you resent others for taking too much, but blame yourself for not being able to set limits. The good news is, there's a way out. The antidote to people-pleasing is self-respect. And self-respect starts with the understanding that your feelings and needs are just as valid as anyone else's. It's not about being selfish, it's about being balanced. It's about recognizing that you can be kind and considerate without sacrificing your own well-being. Saying no or expressing your true feelings doesn't make you rude or unkind. In fact, it can. One of the most respectful things you can do for yourself and for others It shows that you value honesty and are willing to trust the strength of your relationships enough to be authentic. Yes, there may be moments of discomfort, but those moments are where growth happens. When you stop trying to please everyone, something remarkable happens. The people who truly value you will stay, and the relationships you build will be based on mutual respect, not obligation. And in the process, you'll rediscover the power and peace that comes from honoring yourself. Recognizing red flags is not about being overly suspicious or assuming the worst in people. It's about being attuned to your instincts and valuing your own sense of security. Red flags are warning signs, subtle or obvious, that something in a relationship or interaction isn't quite right. The problem is that these signs often go unnoticed or ignored because we want to give others the benefit of the doubt. But ignoring red flags doesn't make them go away. It only allows them to grow into bigger issues that can cause harm to your emotional well-being. The first step in recognizing red flags is to trust yourself. Too often we second-guess our instincts because we don't want to seem judgmental or because we're afraid of confrontation. But your intuition is there for a reason. It's your internal alarm system designed to protect you. If something feels off, it's worth paying attention to, even if you can't immediately articulate why. It's better to ask questions and clarify than to dismiss your own feelings. Red flags can take many forms. They might show up as persistent boundary pushing, where someone disregards your limits, no matter how clearly you've stated them. They might appear as subtle manipulation, where someone makes you feel guilty for saying no or tries to control your decisions under the guise of caring for you. Sometimes they're as straightforward as someone consistently failing to respect your time, energy, or values. The common thread is this: red flags are behaviors that make you feel uncomfortable, undervalued, or unsafe. It's important to recognize that addressing red flags isn't about accusing or blaming the other person. It's about protecting your own well-being. When you notice a red flag, the next step is to communicate clearly. Express what you've observed and how it makes you feel. For example, if someone continually interrupts or dismisses your boundaries, you might say, "I've noticed that when I express my preferences, they're often ignored. That makes me feel disrespected, and I need that to change." This kind of direct communication gives the other person a chance to adjust their behavior. If they respect you, they will. However, not everyone will respond positively to these conversations, and that's a red flag in itself. If someone becomes defensive, dismissive, or hostile when you address an issue, it's a sign that they may not be willing to meet you halfway. Relationships, whether platonic, romantic, or professional, require mutual effort and respect. If someone consistently shows through their actions that they're unwilling to honor your boundaries, it may be time to reevaluate their role in your life. The key is not to fear red flags, but to see them as opportunities for clarity. They help you understand who values you for who you are, and who might only value what you can offer them. By recognizing and addressing red flags early, you create space for relationships that are built on trust, respect, and authenticity, the kind of relationships that truly enrich your life. Mutual respect is the foundation of any healthy relationship, yet it's often misunderstood. Many people think respect is about agreeing with others or giving in to their preferences. But true respect is much deeper than that. It's about valuing someone's boundaries, opinions, and individuality while expecting the same in return. Without mutual respect, no relationship, whether personal or professional, can thrive in a meaningful way. Respect begins with how you treat yourself. If you consistently downplay your needs, allow others to overstep your boundaries, or silence your voice to avoid conflict, you're teaching people that it's acceptable to undervalue. Respect is not something you demand from others, it's something you model. When you show respect for your own time, energy, and values, you set the tone for how others should treat you. This is not about arrogance or superiority, it's about demonstrating self-worth in a way that invites others to meet you at the same level. Being overly friendly can sometimes create a dynamic where respect is unintentionally compromised. When you're too accommodating, too eager to please, or too quick to agree, it can give the impression that your boundaries are flexible or that your needs are secondary. While kindness and warmth are important, they should never come at the expense of self-respect. You can be friendly and approachable without compromising the standards you set for how you're treated. Mutual respect also requires communication. People are not mind readers. They won't always know what you need or where your limits are unless you tell them. This is where clarity comes into play. Expressing your boundaries or preferences is not rude or confrontational. It's a sign of maturity and self-awareness. When you clearly articulate your expectations, you make it easier for others to understand how to engage with you in a way that honors both parties. The challenge arises when respect is not reciprocated. Sometimes, despite your best efforts to communicate and set boundaries, people will test those limits or disregard them entirely. This is when you have to make a choice. Will you tolerate the behavior, or will you enforce the standards you've set? Enforcing boundaries isn't always easy, but it's essential for maintaining respect. It's not about punishing the other person, it's about protecting your own well-being and integrity. What makes mutual respect powerful is that it transforms relationships into spaces of trust and collaboration. When people feel respected, they're more likely to be open, honest, and supportive. And when respect is mutual, it fosters a dynamic where both parties can thrive without fear of being dismissed, manipulated, or undervalued. At its core, mutual respect is a two-way street. It's about recognizing that both you and the other person have value, and that a relationship works best when that value is acknowledged and upheld. It's not just about being treated well, it's about creating connections where everyone feels seen, heard, and valued. That's the true essence of respect, and it's what every meaningful relationship should strive for. Intentional interactions are the cornerstone of meaningful relationships. It's not enough to simply connect with others. How you connect matters just as much. Too often, we fall into the trap of spreading ourselves too thin, trying to be everything to everyone. But in doing so, we dilute the quality of our relationships and leave little room for the connections that truly matter. Being intentional in your interactions means focusing on depth rather than breadth, ensuring that your energy is spent in ways that align with your values and bring fulfillment. Intentionality begins with clarity. You need to know why you're engaging with someone and what kind of relationship you want to build. This doesn't mean approaching relationships with an agenda. It means being honest with yourself about your needs and expectations. Are you seeking support, collaboration, friendship, or something more? By understanding your purpose, you can approach interactions with a sense of direction rather than aimlessly going through the motions. The challenge comes when we feel obligated to engage with everyone equally, often out of a fear of offending or disappointing others. But the truth is, not every relationship deserves the same level of energy or attention. It's not about valuing some people more than others. It's about recognizing that your time and emotional bandwidth are finite. You can't pour into everyone without eventually depleting yourself. Intentional interactions require you to prioritize the relationships that add value to your life and align with your goals. Being intentional also means being present. In a world full of distractions, it's easy to engage with others on autopilot, offering half-hearted responses or dividing your attention between a conversation and your phone. But when you're fully present, you create space for genuine connection. You show the other person that they matter and that their time is valued. Presence is a gift, and it's one of the most powerful ways to build trust and strengthen relationships. It's also important to recognize that intentionality goes hand in hand with boundaries. When you're intentional about who you interact with and why, you naturally become more discerning about where you invest your time. This discernment allows you to say no to interactions that don't align with your values or goals, freeing up space for the ones that do. Saying no isn't about shutting people out, it's about making room for the connections that matter most. Ultimately, intentional interactions are about quality over quantity. They're about fostering relationships that are reciprocal, where both parties feel seen, heard, and valued. It's not about trying to connect with everyone, but about connecting deeply with a select few who uplift and inspire you. When you approach your interactions with intention, you create relationships that are not only meaningful, but also sustainable. And in the process, you cultivate a sense of purpose and fulfillment that comes from knowing your energy is spent where it truly matters. Empowering your voice is one of the most critical steps toward building confidence, respect, and authentic relationships. Your voice is not just the words you speak, it's an expression of your values, boundaries, and individuality. Yet many people hesitate to use their voice fully. They fear judgment, rejection, or confrontation. But when you silence yourself, you lose an essential part of who you are. Reclaiming and empowering your voice isn't just about being heard, it's about honoring your worth. Using your voice starts with self-awareness. To speak up effectively, you must first understand what you truly believe, need, or want. Too often we suppress our desires or opinions because we're unsure of them ourselves. Take the time to reflect. What matters to you? What do you stand for? What are your non-negotiables? When you gain clarity on these questions, you build a foundation that makes it easier to express yourself with confidence. One of the biggest barriers to using your voice is the fear of being perceived as difficult or unkind. But speaking up doesn't have to be aggressive or confrontational. The most powerful voices are calm, clear, and respectful. They communicate boundaries and expectations in a way that fosters understanding rather than division. For instance, instead of saying, "You never listen to me," you might say, "I feel unheard when our conversations are one-sided, and I'd appreciate more balance." The difference is subtle but profound. It shifts the focus from blame to resolution. Empowering your voice also means embracing discomfort. There will be moments when expressing yourself feels awkward or even risky. But growth doesn't happen in comfort zones. Every time you advocate for yourself, you strengthen your ability to navigate challenges and build relationships rooted in mutual respect. Yes, some people may push back or not respond as you'd hoped, but that's not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their willingness or unwillingness to engage with you authentically. Another essential aspect of empowering your voice is consistency. If you speak up sporadically or only when tensions are high, it's harder for others to take you seriously. Make it a habit to share your thoughts, feelings, and boundaries regularly, even in smaller everyday interactions. Over time, this consistency reinforces your self-respect and sets a clear standard for how others should engage with you. It's also important to recognize that your voice is a tool, not a weapon. The goal isn't to dominate conversations or impose your will on others. It's to create dialogue, foster understanding, and build trust. When you use your voice thoughtfully and with intention, it becomes a bridge that connects you to others in a meaningful way. Ultimately, empowering your voice is about reclaiming your agency. It's about recognizing that your thoughts and feelings are valid and that expressing them is not only your right, but also your responsibility. When you honor your voice, you honor yourself, and that is the foundation for building the life and relationships you truly deserve.